lottery ticket turned the lives of these ordinary people upside down. From rags to riches and then back to rags. This is what happens when the lucky winners lose it all. They left their families, quit their jobs, and lived luxuriously, or at least tried to. Like this guy from China, Liu Xiang. When Liu Xiang from China found out that he had won $721,000 in the national lottery draw, he was beyond ecstatic. But unlike other winners who go to pick up their winnings instantly, Liu decided to wait. Turned out his married life was falling apart, with him and his wife, Yuan Li, ready for a divorce. Unwilling to share his sudden windfall, Liu hatched a plan. He went to his wife and tried to expedite their divorce by offering to pay off their significant debt out of his own pocket. Yuan Li, who had no idea about the lottery win, couldn't afford to pass up on the offer, and the couple was divorced within a week. And what does Liu do the very next day after the divorce is finalized? He goes and collects his winnings. If he had done so before the divorce, he would have had to give his now ex-wife a portion, but through this elaborate scheme, he was able to keep all of the prize money. One thing he forgot, however, was that Yuan Li ran a lottery ticket outlet and had friends in the business. And when a family friend, unaware of the divorce, called to congratulate her, the whole scheme came to light. Liu maintained till the very end that his collecting the winnings just a day after his divorce was simply a coincidence. But his ex-wife still managed to get a quarter of the winnings after suing him in court. While that's a heavy blow to the prize pool for Liu, his loss does not even come close to this next lottery winner, Denise Rossi. When Denise Rossi won $1.3 million from a ticket she and her co-workers had all gone in on, she couldn't believe her eyes. It was her dream come true. She would no longer have to work or worry about bills and debts. But there was one problem she had to deal with first. Her relationship with her husband was falling apart, and she certainly did not want to share her prize with him. So, she kept quiet. 11 days after her windfall, she divorced him. Free from her marriage, she was ready to enjoy her life with her newfound fortune. Things were going great, at least for a few years, because out of nowhere, her ex-husband received a message from a company that dealt with lottery winners addressed to Denise. He was initially suspicious but soon realized what had really happened. He quickly sued Denise, and well, the court did not like being taken for a fool. The judge found out that Denise had hidden her winnings during her divorce proceedings, and things went downhill from there. As her lawyer put it, I could have argued successfully that it was her separate property. Or we could have argued, and we would have reached some adjustment had Denise simply been honest. Her lawyer could have probably helped her keep all her winnings. But the furious judge deemed her actions fraudulent and gave all her lottery winnings to her former husband. As for Denise, she is back to zero after losing it all to greed. But even her tale is not as tragic as this next one. Keith Goff. Keith Goff won it big with a lottery worth over $10 million. But later in life, he came to regret that win as the worst thing that ever happened to him. Keith used to be a baker and was happily married for 20+ years. His life was pretty much perfect. But when he won the lottery, all that changed. The newfound wealth began to foster habits that destroyed his life. Keith quit his job and began to spend money extravagantly. He bought expensive cars, racehorses, and luxury suites. Not only that, but he developed a drinking problem that only got worse with time. It got to a point that just 2 years after his big win, Keith divorced his wife of 25 years. The spending habit caught up soon after, as Keith used up all his winnings in just a few years after acquiring them. This was helped along by conmen who found Keith to be an easy target. With no money or job left, he started crashing at his nephew's house. He stopped going outside and seemingly led a very depressed life. In his own words, "My life was brilliant, but the lottery has ruined everything. What's the point of having money when it sends you to bed crying?" In 2010, Keith, once a millionaire, died penniless and alone. His life remains a cautionary tale of what not to do if you ever win a lottery. But Keith isn't alone. There are many more who squander their sudden fortune, like this next lottery winner. Michael Carroll.
That's a lot of winners, but one of them is notorious for being a loser.
Michael Carroll, whose string of convictions meant he was soon dubbed the Lotto Lout.
Michael Carroll used to be a garbage collector whose luck took a turn in the blink of an eye. At the age of 19, he won a lotto prize of around $9 million, which completely changed his life. Michael immediately quit his job. He then shared some of his winnings with his close friends and relatives. He also invested his newfound wealth into investment bonds and financial management agencies. From the looks of it, he was doing everything perfectly and should have been set for life. But turns out, after winning the lottery, Michael had been spiraling out of control. He had been partying, buying drugs, expensive cars, and getting into all sorts of trouble. He eventually landed in court after he was caught getting drunk and breaking the windows on cars and storefronts. He received 240 hours of community service, but that did nothing to stop his antics. And to make things worse, he got threats at his home with people showing up with weapons. Michael kept on buying expensive things like luxury homes, cars, and jewelry, while also developing a drug and alcohol problem. That spending spree meant that in just 8 years, Michael had burnt through his winnings. And you won't believe where he ended up. Last anyone heard of him, Michael is back at his job working as a garbage collector. But it's not like he regrets what he did. As he said, "I don't look back with any regrets, that's for sure. I wouldn't want to turn the clock back." But what happened to this next lottery winner is even sadder. Jack Whitaker. Jack Whitaker was an American Powerball winner who walked away with a staggering $313 million. At that time, it was the largest such lottery ever won. But the win didn't exactly pan out in Jack's favor. He donated 10% of his winnings to charities and religious organizations. He also bought a Lamborghini and drove through his neighborhood, throwing out cash. Quite philanthropic. But things started to go downhill from there. The money attracted the wrong kind of attention. People broke into his car, tried to drug and rob him, and some even managed to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. But things got much worse soon after. One of his granddaughters was found overdosed on drugs, and another was found lifeless on the property of a friend.
Tribble had overdosed. He died in the night, face down, on a bed in this room.
Jack's personal life was severely affected by these losses. He developed a problem with alcoholism and was sued several times. He also got into gambling, leading to his wife leaving him. Things kept getting even worse when in 2009, Jack suffered the loss of his daughter, and in 2016, one of his houses burned to the ground. To Jack, the main culprit behind all these misfortunes was his lottery win. As he himself said, "I wish I'd torn that ticket up." Sadly, Jack died at the age of 72, with most of his family gone. While his lottery win was tragic, this next case is memorable in a different way. Americo Lopez. When a man named Americo Lopez won $38.5 million in a jackpot, he decided to keep it a secret.
But when he stopped showing up at work, the others soon found out they had actually won a $38 million jackpot.
He took a 4-month-long break from work, and only when he came back did his coworkers find out he had won big. They were happy for him and wished him all the best. But then something odd came to light. The date on which Americo made the winning draw, November 10, 2009, was suspiciously close to the date when several of the co-workers, including Americo, had bought a lottery ticket together. The agreement was that if the ticket won, they would split the prize equally. Americo shot back, saying the win had been from a different ticket he purchased the same day, but it wasn't enough to convince his co-workers, who felt cheated. They quickly sued Americo, and the court agreed. Americo was forced to pay out the fair share to each of his co-workers, but the lawsuit wasn't just about money. As one of them put it, "We weren't really looking for vindication, just a sense of satisfaction. That's it. We felt betrayed, and we're glad the jurors felt the same way." Americo and his wife did not take the loss well, and have since stayed away from the public eye. But while Americo came out unscathed, the same cannot be said for this next winner, who lost a lot more than money. Ibi Roncaioli. When Ibi Roncaioli won half a share of a $7.4 million lottery win, she did not know it would cost her dearly. In order to keep her newfound fortune a secret, she did not tell her husband about it. Instead, she began using it in secret. Now, for Ibi, this win was not as significant as it would seem since she was already very well off, living in an expensive mansion. So, she decided to give a good chunk of the prize money to her children. She even gifted a hefty sum to a secret child her entire family was unaware of. And that's where things went wrong.
Whether it's a job worth going back to after a big lottery win or even a crushing loss.
Because when her husband found out Ibi had won a lottery and did not keep any of it for the couple's retirement funds, he was beyond furious. What happened next is horrifying. Ibi was found lifeless not long after her husband found out. When the doctors examined the body, they found several needle marks. According to investigators, it was her own husband who had injected Ibi with painkillers until she passed away. A tragic end for a woman who simply wanted to take care of her kids. Now how about a lottery winner who literally had his house burned down after winning the lottery? Roger Griffiths. Roger Griffiths, alongside his partner, Laura Griffiths, won about $2.2 million in the first ever online national lottery in the United Kingdom. When they found out about the win, they couldn't believe their eyes. They thought at first it was a prank, but the reality soon set in, and the couple went and collected their money.
The dream of holding one of those larger-than-life checks.
And immediately after, they started using up their fortune. They took trips together to extravagant places like Dubai. They also visited Florida and France. They also purchased an expensive property to live in, using up their money at an incredible rate. But this wasn't the reason behind their eventual downfall. The real catastrophe struck when the financial crisis hit the UK. Roger had made investments that did not pay out, causing huge losses. Not only that, but the new home they had bought caught on fire, burning for 3 days straight before the fire subsided. This was especially tough, as Lara puts it. It was a nightmare. We lost all of our possessions too. We didn't even have clothes to wear. By the time Roger and Lara filed for divorce, they had next to nothing to their name. The winnings were gone, and the extravagant lifestyle they had was not easy to transition back into the workforce. A true riches to rags story, much like this next winner. Daniel Carley. Daniel Carley's $3.7 million win in 2006 came as quite a surprise to him. He told reporters he would invest some of the money into his bar while keeping the rest in an account for interest. But seems like that plan was only a dream and nothing more. Daniel ended up blowing half his fortune within 3 years of acquiring it. He made some questionable investments and hung out with people whose only goal was to scam Daniel out of his fortune. And it worked. These scammers, who acted as his friend, stripped Daniel of hundreds of thousands of dollars. By 2012, he was flat broke. Not only that, but clinging to his extravagant lifestyle, he had incurred a lot of debt, and desperation tends to breed bad decisions. In an effort to get more money, the lottery winner ended up involved in drugs. In 2017, nearly 10 years after his big win, Daniel was behind bars for dealing drugs. However, it seems like he is now getting back on the right path. Daniel is giving back to the community, owning up to his mistakes, and trying to do better. He said in an interview, "I take full responsibility. I'm not blaming anybody else. I was uneducated, young. At least Daniel learned something from his downfall, unlike this next winner on our list." William Budd Post III. William Budd Post. The third didn't just have an impressive name, but also pretty impressive luck. After all, he did win a jackpot worth $16.2 million at a point in his life, when he had just a bit over $2 in his bank account. His life was turned around in a matter of seconds when the realization hit him that he was now a multimillionaire. But despite having seen poverty, Budd wasn't about to be responsible in how he spent his newfound wealth. In just 2 weeks after he received his first check, Budd went out and spent $300,000 on gifts and small investments into businesses. These impulse buys weren't a one-time thing either. Budd bought an airplane despite never having acquired a pilot's license. He bought mansions and a liquor license. He was living the high life. In just 3 months after his big win, Budd was up to his eyeballs in debt, totaling $500,000. But that wasn't even the worst of it, because what happened next is terrifying. Budd's marriage was already falling apart. He was on his 6th marriage when his brother hatched a deadly plan. He arranged for a hitman to take care of his brother and his current wife. Unfortunately, that plan failed miserably, and the brother was arrested not long after. Budd then divorced his 6th wife before marrying a 7th one, but by then, he had run out of money. And when a former acquaintance named Ann Karpik sued him for a share of his winnings, he didn't have any way to pay her. In the end, Budd died in abject poverty, $1 million in debt, living on food stamps and a small stipend. This case stands as a stark reminder that even if you have millions, bad money management can only lead to disaster. This next lottery winner had all the good intentions, but ended up with a similar fate. Suzanne Mullins. When Suzanne Mullins won a jackpot of $4.2 million, she thought it would be a way to make life easier for her and her family. Her son-in-law, who had been suffering from a medical condition, had been unable to pay for his mounting medical bills. So the first thing Suzanne did was pay off those medical bills to take a burden off her son-in-law's shoulders. A generous gift for certain. But then, finding herself in desperate need of cash, she went to take a loan of $200,000, using her future winnings as collateral. However, she made a fatal mistake. When new rules allowed lottery winners to take out their winnings in a lump sum, Suzanne did just that. But at the same time, she failed to pay back the loan she had already taken. As a result, the loan company sued Suzanne, but by then, all that money from the jackpot was gone and used up. In the end, Suzanne ended up with nothing from her original winnings. Not only that, but she managed to amass significant debt, turning a financial win into a complete failure. Quite a sad state of affairs, considering she only wanted to help her family. But at least her generosity did not lead to her grave, like it did with this lottery winner, Jeffrey Dampier. Jeffrey Dampier was the winner of the 1996 Illinois lottery, raking in an astounding $20 million. He immediately quit his job, and not long after, divorced his wife, with the now ex-couple splitting the prize money 50-50 between themselves. He then moved to Florida, where he started his own popcorn business. Jeffrey also met a woman called Crystal Jackson, whom he married. Crystal had two sisters, Victoria and Terry Jackson. Since neither of them had a way to support themselves, Jeffrey moved them to his mansion in Tampa Bay, where he took care of all their financial needs. It was supposed to be the perfect family, living in bliss, with not a financial worry in sight. But not everyone living at that mansion was satisfied with how things were. Victoria, Jeffrey's sister-in-law, decided to remove him from the equation to get to his money. She employed the help of her then-boyfriend, Nathaniel Jackson. The two managed to lure Jeffrey to an apartment where they took his life and then tried to cover it up. However, the police were able to catch the culprits, with both Victoria and Nathaniel facing 3 consecutive life sentences. For Jeffrey, his big win literally cost him his life. Believe it or not, though, this next guy got it even worse. Abraham Shakespeare. Abraham Shakespeare was a simple laborer who hit it big when he asked his friend to buy a lottery ticket for him while out on a trip. Turned out the ticket was a winner, and Abraham had just won $17 million. But right from the get-go, things started to fall apart. Abraham was very responsible with the money. He did not go on a spending spree. All he bought was a luxurious home, a Nissan, and a Rolex from a pawn store. Lavish, but not over the top. However, the real trouble came in the form of his close relatives and friends. Michael Ford, the friend who had bought the lotto ticket for Abraham on that fateful day, sued him for $1 million out of the jackpot. The lawsuit went nowhere, though, since his claim was found to be ludicrous. However, that didn't stop others from approaching Abraham. Family members, close friends, and even complete strangers hounded him for money day and night. Frustrated, Abraham even said, "I'd have been better off broke. I thought all these people were my friends, but then I realized all they want is just money." And then the strangest thing happened. Abraham disappeared. At first, his family thought he had escaped to another country to get away from the people begging him for money. But when months passed and no contact could be established, the cops grew suspicious. Turned out, Abraham had gotten into a business venture with a Doris Donegan D.D. Moore, and in this venture, Doris retained full control of the company. And recently, she had been making some very expensive purchases, like new cars and a truck. This did not go unnoticed. While Doris claimed the money was a gift from Abraham, the cops still decided to search their home, and what they found was horrifying.
Moore was convicted of killing lottery winner Abraham Shakespeare and stealing his money.
Abraham's body was found buried on the property 9 feet beneath dirt. He had been killed for his fortune, and the very windfall that had made him rich also took his life. Doris got life in prison without parole. Adrian Bayford. Adrian Bayford won the 2012 EuroMillions jackpot, totaling about $173 million. What he did not expect was the family troubles this win would bring him. He quickly quit his music shop business and bought a huge mansion with his winnings, which came equipped with an indoor cinema and a billiards room. He thought this new luxury mansion would become a peaceful home for him and his family, but instead, it became a source of bad memories that saw his family broken. Just 15 months after the jackpot win, Adrian and his then-wife, Jillian, were divorced. According to his wife, "It's upsetting and raw. The money was supposed to make everybody happy, but it's made them demanding and greedy. My family have lost touch with where they've come from." Since his divorce, Adrian has regretted his big win. Not only that, but he has gone through several engagements that have fallen apart for similar reasons. It seems like he is trying to remedy the damage. Aside from his 4th fiancée, Tracy Biles, Adrian is trying to move out of his big house to his 80-year-old grandmother's home as a last-ditch effort to bring his family close together. Strangely enough, however, no one wants to buy the property from him. He has even tried to plant a vineyard and run an Airbnb from the property, but it's like something is wrong with the place. No venture succeeds, and it won't even sell. Mukhtar Mohideen. Mukhtar Mohideen's case is one of the most interesting lottery win downfalls in history. When Mukhtar went to get the rent from his tenant, Ismail Lorgat, Ismail gave him a few dollars extra to try out the big lottery. Little did he know he had just changed Mukhtar's whole life. Mukhtar went and bought the ticket, and lo and behold, it was the winner, making him entitled to a little over $20 million. But that money soon got to Mukhtar's head. He and Ismail had a verbal agreement that if the tickets won, they would split the money. Mukhtar flat out refused to honor that agreement, and there was nothing Ismail could do about it. He then tried to donate some of his money to his community. But that offer got rejected due to the taboo surrounding the use of lottery money in the Muslim world. Then came Mukhtar's marriage life, which also fell apart within a few years over his unwillingness to share money with his wife and children. As for the rest of his relatives, they got into rows with him demanding money, which in most cases he complied with, handing out significant sums. His now former wife and children became estranged from Mukhtar. They changed their names to get away from his newfound fame and tried to live a life away from the spotlight. Meanwhile, Mukhtar was visiting casinos and hiring expensive one of whom became a mother to his child. By the end, he had burned through his entire earnings and was living alone and dejected in a hotel. In 2017, Mukhtar died at the age of 64 and was buried in an unmarked grave, long forgotten by anyone who would care enough to have his name inscribed on the grave marker. Mukhtar, like many other lottery winners on this list, squandered their fortunes in a matter of years, even months. But could they have done differently? How would you handle a sudden windfall? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts.